This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
And from the border of liberty and prosperity and the highway to the north, this is Safety Wars. I wanted to thank Jay Allen for letting me sit in today on the Rated R Safety Show. We're going to be discussing, just like Jay, safety in the news, safety topics, and then we're going to have a discussion. I usually have a longer discussion on safety and a safety topic that I'm familiar with, and today it's going to be on leadership and safety leadership. So let me, and again, this is supposed to be live, so I'm shutting off all the devices. So who am I? In case you don't know me, I am a host here on the Safety FM network, and my podcast is called Safety Wars. I also have a live program on Safety FM from 8 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday on most nights. Some nights I can't do it. Some nights I can. Basically, it is Safety Wars live. And like I like to say, yeah, we're on, at 8 o'clock on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, we're right in drive time. So we're going to start off with safety in the news. And some news from OSHA. We usually start out with some press releases from OSHA. This is from the U.S. Department of Labor recognizes Chatham Village Foods for workplace safety and health excellence with a STAR designation. A division of the T. Marzetti Company, Chatham Village Foods, has about 200 workers in Wareham who produce croutons. Yes, the stuff on salads. For the bread and bakery product manufacturing industry, the production process includes ingredient mixing, proofing, baking, slicing, seasoning, and packaging and distribution. OSHA's STAR designation follows an April 2022 on-site evaluation by a team of the agency's safety and health experts. STAR site designation is the highest level of recognition that the agency's voluntary protection programs offers. And congratulations to everybody there. So this is from, and I don't mention names usually. Very rarely do I ever mention names on of people who may do things that are not so nice. We'll leave it at that, right? So there is a retail outlet out there that pretty much is in every community in the United States, and OSHA has been over there with some real basic safety stuff, right? Over the last 2 or 3 years, it actually goes back further than that. And it hits that they keep on getting hit with repeat and willful violations and everything else. Let's put some context here. If you're cited by OSHA, and that's usually not a good thing, and you get a fine issued, anytime, if they go back at any point in the future, I believe it's either a 3 or 5 year window there, something like that. They could go back, and if the same thing is happening, they can now hit you with a repeat violation or a willful violation, or something goes, which is basically very expensive. The fines, especially for a large employer, could go up to over $130,000 per citation. But let's remember, all this stuff gets negotiated down. Everybody's innocent till proven guilty, and this is the way it is. Everything gets, a lot of stuff gets settled, things get litigated, and everything else. So here we go. And this is from the OSHA news release from Region 4. Profit over people. Alarming trend continues at such a location where 7 Southeast inspections again find willful violations. So since 2017, this company has over $12.3 million in initial penalties for numerous willful, repeat, and serious workplace safety violations. And it goes on and on and on. What are they? There's really simple and basic things, right? Failure to label, mount, or make fire extinguishers accessible. storing boxes in front of electrical panels, increasing the risk of fire and electrical hazards. So those are two simple ones. You don't block emergency exits. You don't block, this is the number 3, is failing to use exit signs to facilitate safe egress and exposing workers to electrocution, and by keeping unused openings, electrical cabinets closed, and not providing handrails. So basically what does this come down to? If you have an electric panel, you're supposed to keep 3 foot out from the front of that electric panel. You're supposed to have fire extinguishers accessible, labeled, everything else. Now, what happens here with the fire extinguishers, there also has to be a decision made by your management whether or not you're going to be the ones responding to a fire on those fire extinguishers. Are they for employees to use or for first responders to use? Because if you make the decision that the employees are the ones to use it, what do you need? Fire extinguisher training, right? This is one of the things that goes. This retailer is known for selling things very cheap. They get closeouts. I know somebody who was involved in the brokering of this type of business. 2 people actually in my neighborhood here, literally in the neighborhood. And basically, they work on very narrow margins. So what might be happening here is this. Couple of things. One, they're not telling all of their employees and all their managers about these citations. Number 1. Number 2, they are not training their employees because they have small margins now, profit margins. Now, they don't want to send someone out for training if you have high turnover rates. Right. Something else to remember is that this company has had issues with union organization also over the last couple of years. So that's something it's all out there. How come I don't mention names? I live in New York. If I start mentioning names, I could have problems. All right, we'll leave it at that. So, okay, so here we go. Sorry about that. If you notice a little bit of jump in the video, I am actually recovering from COVID, and it's now I'm amazed how I am even on the air here recording this. So, what are we gonna say here?
Bonfire.
Thank you. All right. So, U.S. Department of Labor, Swank Enterprises, aligned to promote workplace safety, health at University of Montana construction project. So, the Department of Labor, OSHA, teamed up with Swank Enterprises in some type of an alliance. Right. So OSHA's Billings area office and Swank Enterprises signed a 2-year alliance to proactively enhance a safe and healthful work environment for employees involved in the construction of a dining facility at the University of Montana in Missoula. The 2 organizations will collaborate to prevent workplace incidents and fatalities by providing training, following best practices, improving safety and health programs, and ensuring compliance with OSHA standards and regulations. The alliance will emphasize the involvement of management and workers in hazard prevention and control. So this is another good thing out there. We're out there. No, we're out there fighting what we call the safety war and teaming up with people, getting other outside resources and everything is a very good thing where we understand, if you're dealing in the construction environment like I normally do, everybody understands exactly how things operate. If you listen to my podcast, you get people screaming, yelling, and cursing and everything else. When we talk about leadership, and then our next video is we're going to be talking about pushback that safety professionals get and everything. You're going to understand where I'm coming from here. So stay tuned. OSHA, right? So this has been updated for recently. So September 30th, OSHA releases the top 10 citations for fiscal year 2022. Now we're into fiscal year 2023, but they always update things. So here we have the fall protection, the top 10 So, fall protection, general requirements. What is that? That means that people aren't even wearing fall protection. And there are something like 5,260 violations there. HAZCOM, hazard communication, that's more of a general industry thing, but it's people not being aware of chemical hazards in the workplace, not being trained, not documented training, right? And remember, that training could be on the job training, but it needs to be documented somehow, some way. So companies think, well, we're going to do on the job training, then they don't document it. Now they're now up Grovno River. You can look up what Grovno is if you're not familiar, and without a paddle. All right. Respiratory protection, 1910 1 to 34. This is one of what they call a vertical standard that is in every area of OSHA where they refer back to 1910 134. So that's number 3. So if you're in the maritime industry, you're in construction, you're in general industry, you're in agriculture, and you're a real employee in agriculture, you're going to be, everybody refers you back to 1910 134. And there's 2,185 violations. Now, you're going to say, well, okay, what does that have to do with? A lot of it has to do with COVID, right? With COVID violation on all those things. And we did a program last year on that, right? That has a lot to do with that. But what are we seeing? When I go into a situation where I get called by a client, hey, are you Jimmy Posel? Yeah, you're that guy on Safety Wars, right? Yeah. Hey, guess what? We had a problem with OSHA with respiratory protection issues. Oh, what exactly are problems did you have? So if you did a little jump there, I had to sneeze. And this is the first time I've had to sneeze on a camera. So if you see it jump around, that's what it is. All right. The respiratory protection standard is 1910 134. Okay, so what is this? The respiratory protection standard. I get a phone call. Hey, Jimmy, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, what exactly, why are you wearing respirators? Well, we're wearing respirators. Well, did you do an industrial hygiene audit? No, we haven't done an industrial hygiene audit. Did you do air sampling or anything? In case you don't know what industrial hygiene means. No, we didn't do that. We just handed out respirators. Okay. Did you send anybody out for training? Oh, what do you mean? Just put it on. Okay. How often are they wearing them? Oh, they're wearing them all the time. Over 30 days? Yeah, over 30 days. Did you send them out for physicals? No, we didn't. Who sends them out for physicals? We just handed to them. And now this is where companies run into issues with the respiratory protection standard. They do not go and do any of the real basic necessary things for that. Ladders. All right, let's talk about it. Number 4, ladders. Again, this is another one. 2,143 times. So real simple with ladders. Improper use, improper ladder. So you're using a step ladder when you should be using an extension ladder. I always recommend the combination now. They sell the combination to get around those rules. All right. Step ladder, you could legally lean. Right. I think it's a great thing. Also, pedestal ladders. I'm not going to endorse any brands, but those are another avenue here. Inspection, confident persons, training. You have to train somebody in using a ladder. Yeah. So one time I had a ladder in the back of the truck. My daughter says to me, she's 4 at the time, Daddy, why do you have a ladder in the truck? Well, Jessica, I had to teach people, they'll do ladder training today, teach people, you got to teach people how to use a ladder? Yeah, from the mouth of babes. Yeah. This has come from a 13-month-old that that climbed a fixed ladder at a gym, right? But bottom line is this. Anything that you do at work for your employees or anything else, you have to train them on. You cannot go and just say, oh, yeah, we're going to go ahead and use it, because people do not know. And if they fall, I can tell you, especially if in states like New York, they're very employee friendly in the lawsuits and litigation. The first thing that they're going to say is we were not trained on how to use a ladder. So it's incumbent on you to train your employees how to use a ladder, right? Proper use, proper inspection. You have an inspection program and everything on there, and you show enforcement of that standard that you're doing. Your chances of you getting cited are going to be a hell of a lot less. Scaffolding. OSHA scaffolding standard had a total of 2,058 violations, right? What does that include? Inspection, incomplete scaffolds, not set up under the direction of a competent person, improperly installed mud sills, not leveled off, improper climbing, fall protection, putting ladders on top of scaffolds, anything like that. That's usually what I see in the field. Big one is lockout tagout. This is one of those ones that hits a sore spot with me, this here lockout tagout stuff. So lockout tagout was violated almost 2,000 times. So it's a 1910-147 violation, meaning general industry. The biggest challenge we have as safety professionals with this is this. Most of the exposures out there for lockout tagout are going to be from electrical. So people feel that that's the only thing that they ever have to look at is electrical. Well, what about plumbing? What about heating? What about if you oil or chemical industry, you have flowing materials through pipes, gases, anything like that, hydraulic, heat, anything like that, right? The other thing is this, when you're working on tools or equipment, you unplug it, right? That's another, that could be a lockout tagout violation too. All of that stuff goes in there because you're trying to prevent inadvertent startup or accidental startup and then getting hurt. One of my favorite stories is this. I was working on a job where they had a pressurized natural gas line feeding a piece of equipment. And what happened was the work crew, my work crew that I was in charge of, the mechanical people, I said, look, everything's locked down and tagged out. We doubled and triple checked in the morning. I said, when you get back from work, your morning break, your lunch, always double check the lockout tagouts. We got a lot of contractors here. We got a lot of people here. We got everything here. We got everything going on. So why, you got to check on things. So what do you think goes? They come back from lunch and all the locks are cut. And there's somebody who was up there checking out the piece of equipment who needed the equipment pressurized. Had my guys not gone and checked out the lockouts and the tagouts, not only would they have been hurt because they were doing hot work on this equipment and had been purged with nitrogen and everything else, so there was no flammable materials in there or anything else, any flammable gases. And I almost said vapors. It's not a vapor, it's a gas, right? Natural gas. And what do you think happened? Had they gone and struck an arc, guess what? You would have had a $187 million Viking funeral, and they would have probably most likely been killed or seriously hurt. So always double check those lockout tagouts. And when asked, hey, how come you did that to the engineer? He said, well, the cost of someone getting hurt is less than us what we have to pay for the vendor to come here to check on the equipment because the vendor is impossible to schedule, backing up project and everything else. So I just tell them to cut the locks. Oh, great. They got security to take him out the front gate. Not for anyone else's protection, for his protection. Powered industrial trucks. Now, we had just done a whole series of powered industrial truck trainings for JCB Technical for several clients. And we're also involved in an accident investigation on a catastrophic incident with powered industrial trucks. Unfortunately, these powered industrial trucks is usually an ex post facto situation where there's an accident and then there's an investigation, right? And that's where they come in. That's my experience. Very rarely does OSHA come in and say, no, unless they have a referral, oh, we're here to see your powered industrial trucks. Usually there's a problem in there with that. One of my good friends, my brother Wally and I used to work with, was killed on an powered industrial truck. where the tine, meaning the forks, went through his Achilles tendon and killed him, eventually from a staph infection. And fall protection training requirements. Again, training. So this is a message for you trainers out there, for your fall protection trainers. When someone calls you up to schedule fall protection training, all right, you need to go out and you need to ask them, what kind of equipment are you using? Well, Jimmy, why is that important? Because it happens all the time where we have what are called tie-off carts. I'm not going to use the brand name, but you know what they are. Tie-off carts, trolleys, some people call them, depending on where you're from, where you're able to go on, let's say, a flat roof, and there are spring-loaded fangs on the inside of them. And when this activates, right, when you're in a fall, the fangs go and drive into the roof, right? And it creates a anchorage point for fall protection. So you go on, let's say this, and this is often when it happens, especially with roofers. Oh yeah, we need fall protection competent person training. Great. And what do they really need? The trainer shows up, shows them a whole bunch of glufonol that's not even relevant to what they're doing. And what do you think happens? Well, they don't get the appropriate training, right? And now everybody's like, it's not out there. Personal protective and life-saving equipment, eye and face protection. So this is a real simple, not wearing hard hats and safety glasses. Real simple. If it's in your plan or you're exposed to eye or face hazards, you got to wear face shields. You got to wear glasses. Yes, if you're wearing a face shield, unless it's something completely enclosed like a blasting helmet or something, you still got to wear safety glasses or goggles, whatever is appropriate underneath. Now, back in the day, the ANSI standard did not require that. But since about 2000, the ANSI standard did require. This is all based on what I've been told. May or may not be true. People like to lie to me all the time. Believe me, every day. If you don't like being lied to, don't be a safety professional. So what happened? So a lot of the old timers, a lot of the senior people out there are along the lines of, hey, I was never told to wear safety glasses under a face shield. And guess what? That could be very well true. That's why they were trained. However, if you're doing OSHA outreach training, which we're here at Safety Wars, that's what we do. Or if you do some other training out there, you're supposed to know that. What I would recommend is, if you're a trainer, you go out and you get a sign-in sheet, and you have on there written explicitly, and then you have the people sign it. That way they cannot say, well, the safety person never told me that. Blah, blah. Yeah, crazy, right? Machine guarding. This is a big one. So again, usually this is ex post facto. There's an accident. So OSHA does an investigation, and what do you think happens? Well, they have to, this is part of what it, with this. With machine guarding, they do an accident investigation, and they end up saying, well, shame on you, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And we're going to cut to a commercial break.
You are listening to Safety Wars. Tomorrow's Safety Today. Safety Wars is streaming now. SafetyFM.com.
In the professional safety community, communication and planning are just a few keys to your program's success. The question many practitioners have is, where do I start? Dr. Jay Allen, the creator of the Safety FM platform and host of the Rated R Safety Show, has built a global foundation to help you along the way. Go to safetyfm.com and listen to some of the industry's best and most involved professionals, including Blaine Hoffman with the Safety Pro, Sam Goodman with the Hop Nerd, Sheldon Primus with the Safety Consultant, Jim Pozell with Safety Wars, Emily Elrod with Unapologetically Bold, and many others. As individuals, we can do great things, but as a team, we become amazing. Dial into safetyfm.com today and surround yourself with a powerful force of knowledge and support.
OSHA recordables, first aid cases, catastrophic losses. You want answers? So do I. This is Jim Polzel with Safety Wars. And we are back here. By the way, this is my first broadcast of the podcast, or whatever we're doing here. All right, two final stories, so we're going to get on to our main event here. This is from a report from the CDC. Sick 911 responders facing nightmare of problems. This is a report on the CDC. So basically, a change in the companies managing healthcare for more than 118,000 people sick by the 9/11 attacks has proven a nightmare for many enrolled in the program. Obtaining medicine and getting other treatment is difficult for people like some volunteers. I'm not going to call them out on the air. Who spent a month working at Ground Zero. Toxins from the rubble and surrounding area gave the person recurrent cluster headaches that are sometimes called suicide headaches because they are extremely painful. So basically, it's a rather lengthy story, but it's along the lines of people are getting care. Now, I watched the 9/11 attacks from my roof when I was living in Hoboken, New Jersey, and I really didn't go into the whole thing because it's a lot of sore subjects here for me. So it's a sore subject because any first year environmental scientists, industrial hygienists, health and safety professional will be able to tell you, especially if they had a legitimate 40-hour HAZWOP training, which we provide, right? Hazardous waste operation and emergency response. You learn about toxicology and the additive formula as described from the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygiene publications and their software. And you know that if chemicals are attacking have the same target organ, you're supposed to do a calculation, and it's all on the CSV and CIH exams, several of them, specifically the ASV exam. You're supposed to be able to go and calculate whether you have an overexposure based on published exposure limits and everything else. Now, that's what we have. I know of 3 certified industrial hygienists that spoke to leadership that told them how bad the air was in the first day and everything else. And as I explained in the disaster response worker class, the outreach training, that often, and they did it most recently with Hurricane Ian, where they suspended OSHA. OSHA went from an enforcement to non-enforcement and consultation branch during a major disaster. And what happened was, out of these 3 people, that one of them ended up committing suicide. Why? Because he was ignored. Basically committed suicide. He went down a path that was so horrible because no one will listen to him. And this was a leader in the industry. He adopted a whole bunch of stuff, bad behavior, negative behaviors, because he couldn't handle it. And that, I guess, is a good segue into our main story here. Sorry, wrong one. This is Safety Wars Solutions. We're going to be talking about introduction to safety leadership. And you're going to say, Jim, what about safety leadership? What's this all about, safety leadership? I'm going to explain it to you real simple. I did not have good examples for leadership when I was growing up. Leadership is inherent, right? I was brought up, and I love my parents, and I love, that's not the issue. I don't have an issue here with the parents. How are they taught? I come from a Eastern European family. Did the 23andMe DNA thing, more Eastern European than I had thought, some of them over 3/4. Mother and father, reportedly, our distant relatives came from the same area of Poland, way back in the Wayback Machine. But what was the model for Eastern European? My mother, as anybody knows, was brought up in concentration and refugee camps. My father was brought up in typical Eastern European and Prussian, for lack of a better word, upbringing. And that leadership was a little bit different. And that leadership was appropriate for when they grew up and where they grew up, which was, you're going to be, right, which is along the lines of Kenny from South Park. You're going to respect my authority. That's what it was, right? Yes, I have the microphone right. No, you will respect my authority. And that's not really applicable anymore. So when I went into the real world, I found out that, and again, I lived a very sheltered life. I had major issues growing up, right? Cleft lip, cleft palate. You want to talk about bullying, I don't, and psychological abuse, believe me. I could do a whole series on that. But that's not what it's about, not about me. What I realized was I had no way of managing people when I went into the safety field because I was on the, you're going to respect my authority. And that is what we call leadership by assignment. So that's along the lines of, I'm the safety professional, I'm the manager, you're the worker, you shall do that. That ain't going to work for a 22-year-old. And let me do an aside here. When you look at a certain movie set that had a very young person in charge of safety, and someone got shot and killed last year, my opinion, that probably had something to do with it. You had very strong personalities, and you had a young safety professional there, So what do we find out? What's leadership? Leadership is not education. Leadership is not success. Leadership is not certifications. Leadership is not book knowledge or doctors, Google, Facebook, and I'll add one, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or any of those. That's not what leadership is. So getting into this, I was a pretty successful safety professional, right? Millions of man hours without a major accident, a couple of little, de minimis, what do we call it? Injuries, right? Yeah, they were recordable. They were de minimis scratches, lacerations, minimal things, right? Still lost time, or, but no major injuries. So I was pretty successful. Credentials, people laugh at me with the credentials, right? Even today. Because I took every opportunity to go and get credentials, and that's a story for another day. Book knowledge, hell, my wife, she says to me when we moved into our first house and I had everything in a storage space, man, you got a lot of books here, Jimmy. I said, yeah, well, did you actually read all of them? And I said, yeah, I actually read all of them. And I always made sure that I had access to doctors, Google, Facebook, the internet, and everything else. But what we learned was this. None of that means anything for leadership. So who could be a leader? You're going to say. My description could be this. It could be opposites. It could be the most successful person. It could be the least successful person. It could be the most educated. It could also be the least educated. Because least educated might know how to sound convincing, or might actually have field knowledge on how to do something. Most experienced, least experienced, the one who knows English the best, especially if you're dealing with a multilingual work crew. Who knows English the best? It could be the person with the car keys and the one without the car keys. right? It could be the veteran also. It could be many different things. It could be anybody who could be the leader. And because what it comes down to is, what is a leadership, right? So you can have leadership by assignment, people doing what, as I say, or people wanting to follow you. That's earned leadership. Incentives show who the leaders are often, if you're looking to identify one. Leaders are often the people that manage the pay, manage the schedule, manage the annual review, right? Kind of please those folks. Manage people, right? I'm putting those are the lead. Hey, I'm not, hey, if it comes, push comes to shove, person who's signing someone's paycheck tells someone to work on safely, they're going to work on safety over the safety professional every freaking time. That's the way it is. I don't care what organization you're in, all right? Unless, there's a caveat, unless management is behind safety. And this is what I tell people. When you go and you get hired on to a job, you have to make damn sure, you got to make damn sure that you know what your responsibilities are. You have to write it explicitly. So, case in point, we had a client who had to be deposed. It was a horrible deposition. She came in literally shaking. She came to my site, one, because one of her best friends in the industry was there, and she had to just, like, decompress. I had to decompress. And his name was Jim. Jimmy, I need to decompress. So she put me in there also. She said, I happen to be there. And I said, to this person, I said, let me ask you a couple of questions here. I said, do you have the authority to hire anybody? No. Do you have the authority to fire anybody? No. Do you have the authority to discipline people? No. So you have no authority in the mind of most people on this project, and most people in your company, because you have no say in anything. She says, yeah, that's right. I said, so explain to me how a person or a company like your employer hires with no, they don't even verify training records. Their pre-job, their pre-bid qualification is whether you have an insurance policy. So you explain to me how they're going to, how you're supposed to manage any of this. I said, by the way, our mutual mentor, Dr. Norman Van Houten, right? No, nationally recognized toxicologist, he would tell you the same thing. So that's what it is, right? If you have no way to manage anyone, how are you supposed to manage anyone? The next one, facts don't always matter. What does that mean? You have, and this is all since the 2015, since 2015 in this country. You have competing facts. Ooh, what's a competing fact? Well, you have your facts, I have my facts. But some of these facts are correct or incorrect facts. They're houses of cards. People often build up conspiracy theories. And even if they're true facts, the facts don't matter. Why? Because the job ultimately has to get done. And unless you're this person getting the job done, it doesn't really matter. So now it comes into everything. What is leadership? Best definition I ever had. People have these long, drawn-out things, right? We have keep it simple and stupid, right? KISS, right? Leadership is influence. What's influence? Where did I get that definition from? That is from Mitchell Toll, who's an American watercolor artist. He's also a minister now. I knew him before he was a minister. And he used to give leadership presentations all throughout the United States and Canada back in the early 2000s, late 1990s. And that's what it was, just influence. Who's influencing that, right? Leadership, right? A lot like safety, right? I think of it as a pyramid. I think of leadership as you're building a block. building a pyramid. No, we're safety professionals. We have safety pyramids. Let me see if I can do a share of screen here. Yes, I am reading off of a PowerPoint here. So here we have this. Leadership pyramid. The more you add to your leadership onto the site, the more you're going to have leadership. And any one of these bricks and these blocks that I have put in here, right? And I'm going to read them all. Develop leaders, change, praise in public, criticize in private, look for new leaders, communication, understand and take care of your team, make sound but timely decisions, train as a team, be optimistic, achieve a professional competence, know your limitations, seek out and volunteer for responsibility, and lead by example. So what I want you to realize here is that you have, and let me get that back so it's something I can read, right? The more bricks you have in your leadership pyramid here, the more likely you're going to be a leader. And guess what? Any one of these bricks you may not have, but that doesn't mean you don't have leadership, right? It's like safety. What's safety? And we scream and yell at that on this. It's capacity. It's presence of controls, not the absence of accidents, incidents, or illnesses. You have more controls. You have more safeguards in. You're building the capacity into your system. You foul up on one thing, you got something else to back you up, right? But you don't need to have all these attributes that I mentioned. So let's go through them. Brick, number 1, optimism. It's perhaps the most important leadership attribute. Who wants to be around a downer all the time? That sucks, to be a downer, right? And because behaviors are infectious. And, the other thing is that you're not afraid of failure. You're not allowed to try out new things. Be optimistic. Look on the bright side of life. I'm not allowed to use music here, but unless it's royalty-free. But, you have the Monty Python song. Always look on the bright side of life. Achieve professional confidence. We have, so I'm told, here on the Rated R Safety Show, 300 plus credentials out there. Go out there, get an education. What I did when I didn't have any money or anything else, and I still don't have a lot of money, I used to go and get used books off of a certain service. And they would have all different types of books, one or two editions out for like $4, $5 a book. Then you have learning teams. That's another one. You can have 3, right? Brent Sutton and all those people with learning teams, right? Event learning teams, everyday learning teams, management of change or periodic learning teams, all of that. Learn the job. One of my wrong approaches was when I got out of college was that I knew everything. That is a common thing. Know your limitations. Gotta know it. I have some media here that that's copyrighted. I'm not allowed to play, but it's Dirty Harry at the end of Magnum Force. And what does he say at the end of Magnum Force? It's not, go ahead and make my day, pal. No, it's a man has got to know his limitations. And that's something you need to know. Know what your limitations are. Try to fill that in with other people. Hey, I might not know X, Y, and Z, but guess what? I'm going to try to find out. Number 4, brick number 4, seek out and volunteer for responsibility, right? Don't be out there. I'm afraid, I can't. No, you go out and seek out, volunteer some responsibility. I'm not saying overcommit, but where you're able to, right? Lead by example, right? What does that mean? You want to be leading from the front. I often go out especially when I hire people, I go out there, I do audits, and I show people, this is what I need you to do. This is periodic. And I encourage them to give me a call. This is how we need to handle this. This is what we need to do. And guess what happens with that? At a certain point, that's one way of leading by example. You can show, hey, if you have to go out and say, I'm the boss, guess what? You ain't the freaking boss. All right. You go out there and you lead by example, whatever it is. If you're the a job requires you to wear certain PPE, like a hard hat and safety glasses, go out there, wear a hard hat and safety glasses. You go and do it. Why? Because you're not going to expect anyone else to do it if you're not doing it. If it's to have a safety meeting at the phase of every work, guess what? You got to be out there driving the safety meeting. Going out, we're going to have a safety meeting. You got to be out there in front. Communication. Right? From Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is failure to communicate. And when you get, and some men, how does it go? Some men don't get that. And when that happens, you have a problem like we had out here this morning. Communication is everything. Right? That's not exact one, but close enough. All right. That's basically it with that. You got to communicate. How do you do that? We're gifted here. We are gifted. Go home and thank God, whatever God you believe in. We have the internet. We have podcasting. You can have internal podcasts, which we do. Weekly meetings, online platforms. This is where you get the marketing people involved. Let them know what safety is doing. Hey, yeah, this is what we're doing. Keep a list of your accomplishments. That way, when that annual review comes up, guess what? Now you have a thing. You have some ammo here. You have something to go by. Number 7, understand and take care of your team. Right? Now you have to, right? And this is one of my favorite quotes from Richard Branson. Take care of your employees and they will take care of you and your business. It's as simple as that. You got to find balance, though. You don't want to get too personal, but you want to remind them where they fit in and how important their contributions are. Measure what matters. All right. I had a situation where, hey, boss used to say, where one supervisor was like, hey, you're always coming in late. And it wasn't to me, it was somebody else. And the big boss said, how often she's coming in late? She's working till 10, 11 o'clock every freaking night for me. Leave her alone. This is what matters. I don't know. What's production on the end? Number 8, make timely but sound decisions. Make sound but timely decisions. Delaying a decision may show hesitancy, loss of confidence, confusion, or failure. So you make sure that you have all this crap ready ahead of time. Couple of my pet peeves. The OSHA 301 incident report needs to be completed within 1 week of the incident by 29 CFR 1904 29B3. But a lot of job sites require it to be filled out by the end of the shift. What's the result? You have a rushed investigation leading to rushed decisions that may not be right, but also you blame the employee for everything. And this is a way for the management to basically blame everybody else for themselves for not setting up a good system. Right? And if the incident resolution is not right, and you come up with an idiotic resolution, and of course, you're the face of your leadership, you're the face of safety on site, you're going to look like an idiot. Right? So what do? I always try to plan ahead. I try to do a fatal flaw analysis ahead of the job. What could go wrong and what are we going to do? I make sure I have my emergency action plan updated and ready to go. Work on crisis management, business continuity, and scripts. Always have that script ready. Another one, number 9, train as a team. Always train as a team. You don't want to do a one-off training, one-on-one training. Sometimes we're forced to do that. Guess what? We're forced to do it. That happens. Well, what do we need? We need to have, train as a team. That way everyone's on the same page. Always make sure management is in that training also. Change, right? This is the other thing, change. Organizations, especially nowadays, have been going through a lot of change with the COVID situation and everything else. Argue against bad change in private, right? This is another one. Praise in private, right? Criticize in private, praise in public. told your manager, hey, I don't really think that this is the right way for the organization to be going, and this is why, X, Y, and Z. If management has made up its mind, you have a decision to make. My decision is usually, well, I don't agree with this, but you know what? You hire me to promote this is what we're going to do. But realize I'm not going to be promoting something that makes us all look silly, especially me. There's a lot of management out there where, there was one guy named Tom, first name starts with a D, in Central Jersey, who was at a site who literally went and destroyed a safety program for a company in 1 minute. Why? Because the change was for his company was to report near miss good catches. We report a near miss good catch. He did not agree with that change. And rather than him taking up with his management, he took it out on the contractors. Basically destroyed the whole thing. It was bad change, and he didn't know how to manage change in that organization. So this is from Vince Lombardi. Praise in public, criticize in private. This is another one where we talk about on the Safety Wars podcast. So we have a situation where we have somebody was wanted to confront me, and it was a shop steward at a job. All right, I'm neutral on unions, right? Generally speaking, I'm pro-union. And the shop steward was very upset because of some work rules. One of them being that you had to wear gloves at all times, and I had a 100% hand protection policy. I didn't agree with the policy, but we're directed this is what the rule is, and you're not going to change it. So he gets up in front of me and starts screaming and yelling. You should be arguing on our behalf. And blah, 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 blah. I said, first of all, I don't work for the union. I work for the company. Well, you should still. You're their safety person. Blah, blah, blah. This is a stupid rule. Blah, 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 blah. Now, his whole thing was to get me off the job because I actually enforce rules. Other contractors, they didn't necessarily enforce rules, and they somehow had side deals made with the general contractor where they didn't have to do certain things. But they weren't, we tried again and again, and we were told if you bring this up again, you're pretty much off the freaking job. Okay, no problem. So I said to the guy, I said, look, his name was John. I said, John, no, you're very good at what you do. You're a very good arguer. You're a really good representative for your work crew here. I'm going to make a suggestion for you. And he says, oh, yeah, what? I said, I tell you, why don't you go, since you're so articulate and so passionate, why don't we bring you up to the site manager, the general contractor, and we're going to have you argue on your behalf. And I said, no, I'll be right behind you. I'll go up there with you. I'll be right behind you. I'll support you. Got real quiet. He was like, well, what's the issue? What's the issue? Let's go. We'll go up there. We'll argue. The guy's in the office right now. He's waiting for people to come in after their safety meetings to hand in all the safety meeting forms to make photocopies. We'll do that later. Guess what? He never did it. Big surprise, because had he done that, he probably, even though he was a shop steward, things were set up on the job that the shop steward was not beyond being thrown off the job. So we turned it around on him. But again, had he addressed me in private, this might not have turned out this way. And I would not have made a fool out of him in front of all of his coworkers. And again, he was in the union leadership here. Right? Look for new leaders. So you know what to do in the organization. You got to train your leaders to be leaders. You have to go out there and show what leadership is. You got to train. Look for the same attributes, everything that we described here. And look for, and the other thing is, the last brick on that pyramid is develop new leaders. Right? So if you want to see this again, let's put it up here again. Right? You want to, there it is, develop new leaders. always develop new leaders here, because that's what you owe to your organization to do, is to have new leadership out there, develop them. So maybe when you're not with the organization anymore, you're able to leave it in a good spot. Also, that always comes back to you years later, where you're helping people out and everything. So what's our conclusion here? In case this all look familiar, this is from the U.S. Army Manual on Leadership, right? Army Corps, the ADP 6-22, Army Rules for Leadership, and I added a couple more on there, right? So leaders need to realize that they may never be able to influence people. They may need outside help. You may need to call in someone else who's able to influence people. Leadership is earned and you must earn it. You cannot continue to say, well, I am the leader. Look at me, I'm the leader. You have to go out there and you had to earn it. You had to get people to want to follow you, right? And don't ever take things personally. We're going to talk about that in our next program right after this, which tomorrow, which is going to be on the rules for radicals. The presentation and program, what's my hope? The presentation and program is going to spill over into everything. Your personal life. We need leaders in society now. We need sane and rational leaders, right? And remember, this is election week, right? And that's why we're all safety professionals, is to provide leadership and save lives. So what's the conclusion here? One person cannot change the world. But like we do here on Safety FM every day, on those 18 different podcasts and programs, including the Rated R Safety Show, we communicate the message that's going to save the world. And that's the safety revolution here. That's what we're here for. So where can you find me? You can find me all over the place here. You could find me on your major podcast network, all of them, right? Safety Wars. You could go back to safetyfm.com. I'm on live, usually from 8 to 9 p.m. every evening. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and bearing with me. And I want to thank Jay Allen for allowing me on the show. So, and to take over part of the time. For Safety Wars, this is Jim Polzel. Take 3. Okay, before we go, I just wanted to discuss who we are. We are Safety Wars. We are a podcast. We are a live programming here on Safety FM. We're heard every night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on safetyfm.com. You could download the app at your favorite app store. And we are also available on your favorite podcast network, where I think we're on like 35 podcast networks, like most of the people here on Safety FM. And we're available. There's Safety Wars, or you may be Jim Polzel's Safety Wars. And yes, that is a registered trademark. We're owned by JCB Technical Services, and we offer training classes in most health and safety areas, including outreach training. All 4 areas, so construction, maritime, general industry, and disaster outreach training. We do that, right? All levels, right? Forklift, scissor lift, and aerial lift training, we also do. And we're also do weekly safety meetings that are delivered right into your mailbox, right into your inbox. We manage that for you. And where we are able to, we do safety training remotely at weird hours. I've done training for clients at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning already, because that's the only time they can get everybody together. So if you need us, it's for me, Jim at safetywars.com, or you can call us at 845-269-5772. I look forward to working with you in the very near future. And have a nice day.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast,